All right, chapter 20. Uh, I don't know. This is probably where I'm supposed to do the recap and everything, but again, like the past like three, four or so chapters have just been nothing but, oh, I'm gonna move this around, I'm gonna move that around. Oh, the people can fear me, blah 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 blah. I can only say so much before it gets stale, and it's already gotten stale, and I'm sick of saying the same thing over and over again. And uh, I don't know. I mean, I guess like I can talk about what's going on like my regular life. Yeah, this is gonna be the last. I'm going back to overtime again. Actually, if you guys remember a couple videos ago, this is gonna be the last Friday off I'm gonna get for a while. So I'm thinking I might as well crank out this long chapter while I can, so that it's not like super piled up, and I'm just delaying the inevitable. And that's only so. Okay. For some reason, I thought this chapter was. I'm a moron. For some reason, I thought this chapter was longer than it was. But I guess happy Halloween, everybody, because as of the time of recording, it is Halloween. Which, granted, that's like my second least favorite holiday because I don't like anything to do with spirits or witches or ghosts or anything. It's just not something I like to dance around with. But oh well. Let's get right into this. Chapter 20. 3 very busy weeks. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Theresa. She had like some sort of island going on. Like that's the real takeaway. I forgot that they like moved gold or oil to some place. Blah blah blah. And there's like a Theresa Island or something. I'm probably gonna title this like Island or something. I don't know. I'll think about it. Anyway, chapter 20. Oh, and sorry, one more stop. My laptop was really low battery. Apparently, it wasn't charging like this whole week, so I had to like kind of move to like a kitchen table right now to charge it up. So I apologize if the sound sounds kind of funky, but anyway, here we go. Chapter 20. 3 very busy weeks had passed, and it was time to raise the land bridge to Crete. It was going to be a mile wide and 620 miles long. When Steve and I met Blair and Scherzer in London, I thought raising the land bridge would be simple. Have you seen those films where divers retrieve ancient Greek treasures from sunken ships? I assumed the Mediterranean's depth was only 100 feet. It turned out that it was only along the coasts. It turns out that was only along the coasts. Further research showed the Mediterranean was mostly a mile deep. Raising, if that's in quotations, raising the land bridge at that depth would cause too much disturbance to the sea's floor. Sea is capitalized for some reason. Something more complicated was needed. I'd already used a HAL program to move a snake-like string of gold from the North Pole over North America down to Fort Knox, and modified the program to bring silver to a British Army post. Now I modified the program to build the land bridge. I started the HAL program. I didn't want to catch some boat by surprise, so I programmed HAL to raise it starting at the Israeli end and gradually move out to Crete. Scherzer and his people crowded on the shore, watching the bridge build up to 50 feet above the Mediterranean Sea. Here's how the program worked. Hal grabbed some of the limitless mud on the floor of the Atlantic, flattened a stream of it next page, a mile wide, and moved the stream in the air from the Atlantic over the Mediterranean to Israel. I always get confused. Like she programs Hal, like she puts in like a prompt or tells him to do something. I still don't understand how it works 20 chapters in. At first, the water was shallow, and the bridge broke the surface quickly. As the water got deeper, it took longer to break the surface, and I changed the program's parameter to slow down the flying stream's progress. The media had helicopters and boats watching the bridge's progress, and kept me informed how much to speed up or slow down the program to build a nice, evenly high bridge all the way to Crete. The whole process took 2 weeks. There was enough room on the bridge for all the Israelis within hours, if they needed to evacuate immediately. Because the mud above the sea surface was 50 feet deep, the water's pressure made the water move to the lower mud pile very quickly. Finally, another program I'd written scraped the top of this mud pile into a flat surface. Some of the Israelis cheered, others weren't so happy. Not all of them wanted to leave no matter what the OPEC situation descended to. Yeah, well, when they saw a gun pointing at their children's heads, they would change their minds. If they wanted to sacrifice their own lives for a hopeless cause, fine, but they had children to worry about. The only alternative was for me to kill millions of their enemies. I wasn't going to do that. I was going to say, oh, she's going to start doing genocide. I don't know. With the new Jewish island in the North Atlantic and the land bridge to Crete in place, there was no longer hiding the plans I made with Prime Minister Scherzer. It was obvious that we were preparing for evacuation. Politicians in the Israeli parliament and people in the streets vigorously debated the issue. I didn't follow it much. When the situation had to be made, people would do what they had to do. What they had to do, that's what it actually says. But people would do what they had to do to stay. What they had to do to stay. Okay, it's missing a do. The people would do what they had to stay alive. The next day, Blair showed up at the Parker estate with a really big surprise. I forgot what Blair's voice is. I'm losing it. Okay. A representative from Saudi Arabia wants to meet you in Geneva, Switzerland. I was frozen for a moment. The idea of negotiating with these blackmailers had never occurred to me. Will you be there? No. It will be... I don't know who's talking. Will you be there? No. I will be with you and the Saudi alone, except for a neutral Swiss official there in consideration of your gender and age. You can't be serious, Mr. Blair. I'm only 18. I'm supposed to negotiate with this expert? You don't have to agree to anything the first day. These meetings occur in many sessions over several days. We will be there with you between sessions. Tell us the latest proposal, and we will advise you. Why am I talking to a Saudi Arabian instead of OPEC? Saudi Arabia is considered a friend of the United States. The two countries cooperated fully in the Persian Gulf War. Mind you, they're not close friends. There are serious disagreements. Saudi Arabia has some influence in the Arab world, but it's limited. Some Arab countries hate each other more than the United States, but all agree they are in the same lifeboat on the global stage. This is all very vague, I'm sure, but the Saudi will come to Geneva, hoping to get something. I point out that if what he suggests is agreeable to us, then he is our friend. What will he ask for? We believe it will begin with the oil island. Next page. We think he will propose that the oil island be administered by a consortium of nations, if I'm saying that right. To make this accessible to you, he will suggest it be administered by all countries that drill oil, whether or not they export it. This would include the United States, Canada, Mexico, England, Brazil, Russia, China, and many others. The purpose is to control the supply so as to keep the price at a fairly profitable level. Every country will want to do this, obviously. But if I lose control of the island? Yes. What will they give me? Well, think the first thing they offer is to cancel your donations to the World Poor Fund. That doesn't cost them anything. It doesn't. If this offer isn't enough, we believe they will abandon their demands that Israel be turned over to the 1947 occupants. The truth is, many of the common people over there don't care that much about Israel. It's largely an issue for political posturing. That doesn't cost them anything either. True. However, we don't believe they will yield their insistence that you remove the grounding of the terrorists. Terrorists are not universally supported over there. Indeed, there have been terrorist bombings inside Saudi Arabia itself. However, most Arabs would not want to see the end of terrorist organizations. They are jealous of Western society and wealth, and are amused to see the terrorists slap us in the face once in a while. The Saudi representative cannot ignore this popular support. Please understand that Saudi Arabia is not responsible for this quagmire. This man is trying to find a way to reduce tensions. He is our friend. What does Prime Minister Scherzer think of all this? Prime Minister Scherzer wants his people to move to the new island where they will be safe forever. That would take away the OPEC's only bargaining chip. I could ignore everything else. Quite right. However, not all Israelis are sympathetic to his wish. To many of them, the Holy Land, especially Jerusalem, is sacred, and they couldn't conceive leaving. Many have already said they will fight to the death before leaving. Don't these diehards have wives and kids to worry about? That is the big question. If there is a crisis and certain death seems imminent, will these traditionalists stay regardless of loss, or will they leave? Such questions are not decided ahead of time, but on the day of crisis. So in the end, whether there is a crisis or not may be up to me? Prime Minister Scherzer is aware of that. He understands your power and your challenges. What does he want me to do? He doesn't want you to do... He doesn't want you to give away anything. Any agreement would leave danger in place indefinitely. He wants the situation to play itself out, whatever the outcome. Do his people agree with him? Probably not, but it's not up to them. Doesn't sound very democratic. It never is. What can the masses do but wait for... Next page. What can the masses do but wait for their leaders to decide? Your Congress did not decide the conduct of World War II. Neither did your President Roosevelt. The military decided strategy. And in this case, Scherzer has to go along with me. Right. Great! Scherzer doesn't want me to make any deal to prod his people to the new island. And it's his people's lives at stake. Everybody else wants me to make a deal to keep their oil. Hard as it may be, that is the situation. I want a television camera in that room. I want everybody to see what's going on. We shall insist. Okay, so this is back to her narrating, by the way. What was my young head supposed to think of all this? Why should I negotiate at all, since Blair and others could do the job better than I could? Then I realized the Saudi negotiator probably thought he could get me to agree to a deal Blair and the others wouldn't like. Maybe he was right. Maybe he'd convinced me Blair's gang was just looking after their own butts and didn't prioritize my interests. Blair and Scherzer must have been aware of these possibilities, but had no choice but to let me negotiate. I had the power. I talked everything over with Steve, but he understood no more about this political Chinese puzzle than I did. We arrived in Geneva in the early evening and checked into a hotel. Blair didn't talk to us that night. I think he knew I needed to get my mind on something else, or I might become overwrought. The meeting was to begin early in the morning. I must have been the only person in the world who didn't know the name of the Saudi negotiator I was going to meet. I hadn't paid attention. It didn't matter to me what his name was, and to be honest, what he had to say didn't matter much to me either, unless he was prepared to give up all his demands. As we drove to the building where the meeting would take place, I had 3 thoughts in mind. Blair and most of the world wanted the oil from my island at giveaway prices. Scherzer wanted the Israelis on the new North Atlantic island, where they lived better than they ever had since Abraham. And the poor Israelis themselves didn't know what they wanted. Steve and I walked into the building accompanied by Blair and his 6 advisors. Steve carried a large manila, I don't know what this word is, manila envelope. There were far more people inside. I estimate there were over 100 representatives from many countries. Scherzer was there, keeping a careful eye on me. Poor man, he was powerless to affect events. Blair asked me, "What is your final strategy?" I can't answer because my final strategy depends on the common people to hear it from me first. As I see it, we're really dealing with two groups. One is the governments of OPEC, the other is the terrorist and the people who support them. But not all the people support the terrorist. This Saudi has two groups to deal with too, us and the terrorists. Somehow, he has to keep everybody happy while some of his people are working against him. I'll deal with the governments and forget about the terrorists. I have a surprise. This is all very mysterious to everybody who heard it, but my intention was that it get back to the next page, get back to the Saudi negotiator so that he'd know I had a surprise for him. It would make him listen instead of snowballing me. A television camera showed the meeting room. A 50-year-old woman was seated at the end of a table, like she was the chairwoman of a corporate board. She was the neutral Swiss official, there to protect my virtue or something. Two chairs on either side of the table had been drawn back. That's where I and the Saudi would sit. I guess if we started throwing knives at each other, the Swiss woman was supposed to throw her body between us. An official appeared and said it was time for the meeting to begin. Good luck, said Steve, handing me the manila envelope. I should know my words better. I followed the official out to the meeting room door, where the Saudi negotiator waited. I barely glanced at the Saudi. We walked into the room together. He walked around the Swiss woman to take the farthest seat, and I sat in the nearest. I opened. We can clean this mess up fast if I speak first. Please, he said with a smile and a hand signal, inviting me to go ahead. He must have heard I had a surprise for him, and he could see my mysterious manila envelope. This mess was started by the organization, and you had to go along like a baseball team is expected to clear the dugout and run on the field when two players start a fight, but your heart wasn't in it. The only two players fighting are me and the organization. You're here to calm things down. I understand that, and appreciate you calling this meeting. Your oil will run out in 40 years, and then what will you have? Let's not talk about oil today. I have a fabulous treasure that will last you forever, that will make all your people richer than they ever dreamed of, that I will be glad to give you free if there's no attack on Israel. I wasn't being extemporaneous, extemporaneous. I don't know this word. I don't know my words. Every word and gesture was carefully planned. He knew I had a bombshell and waited. I opened the manila envelope and took out a pile of computer printouts. Here, take a tour around the Mediterranean. Here's the desert of Algeria. Could you pass him this, please? I slid a picture of the desert towards the Swiss woman to pass to the Saudi. The table was 6 feet wide, and I didn't want to make paper airplanes. The Saudi glanced at the picture. The desert of Libya. Sorry, that's her talking. The desert of Libya, I said, passing another picture. The desert of Egypt. The desert of Iraq. The desert of Iran. The worst of all, your own Saudi Arabian desert. Not even bacteria grows there. He was particularly interested in that picture. Your countries are all desert because the land is flat. You don't have mountains to make the air rise up and cool off. The air stays hot enough to evaporate rain before it hits the ground. You're all crowded in cities, on the coast, and the desert starts a few miles away. Now let's take a look at Europe. Next page. I passed a beautiful picture of the Italian Alps, Italy. And here is a picture of the French Alps, France, and the Swiss mountains, Switzerland. Some of their ski resorts stay open 12 months a year, and Austria's mountains, Austria, and the beautiful hills of Germany with tiny villages surrounded by vast areas of green grass and trees, Germany. That was the end of my tour. The land around the mountains I can raise in your country will be below sea level. It will become freshwater lakes. I will give you all the mountains you want if there's no military attack on Israel. I've been told you have no control of the terrorists. They even attack you. I don't see how we can talk about the other issues until some future time. Let's give the terrorists and the people a chance to prove they can behave. What you have to worry about is what the little shopkeeper with a wife and 4 kids to feed wants for the future. They have a desert. I can give them France. Yeah, I'm just going to give you the country of France, because why not? Did he get the message? I thought so, and walked out of the room to rejoin Steve, Blair, Scherzer, and all the others. Blair said, "Very clever idea." I made him an offer he can't refuse. Right now, he must be figuring out those mountains are 10 times as valuable as his oil. 95% of his land is totally useless desert. I can give him France. He can't risk losing that. Interesting, he didn't say. I don't know who's talking. Interesting, he didn't say anything. He got the message. I could see it in his eyes. The message is I can raise land and I can lower it too. Look what I did in Antarctica. Blair rolled his eyes. No wonder he said nothing. Steve said, "Isn't she a female dog?" We all laughed. I wasn't giving away secrets. It would only be a matter of minutes before the media figured out I could lower OPEC's land. It was reasonable to think I would only do this if there was a governmental military attack against Israel. I had said the OPEC governments didn't control the terrorists, so they didn't have to panic about what I'd do in case terrorists attacked on their own without the government backing them. The carbon, this is in singular quotations for some reason, the carbon, if that's what it was, arrived from the sun. It was an 82-mile wide red-hot ball. I gently nudged it into orbit 5,000 miles up. Scientists pointed out that because of its size, it would stay red-hot for centuries. To see if it was diamonds or just carbon, I programmed Hal to grab a small handful of the stuff and bring it down to a wide field on a British Army base. They were diamonds, a 300 feet high and 800 feet wide pile of them. The jewelry industry was thrown into a panic until it was realized women would buy 100 times as many diamonds as before because of the cheaper price. A box of the diamonds was delivered to me. They were uncut stones from a 1/4 inch to 3/4 of an inch wide in all kinds of shapes and rather dull in their raw condition. But it was still a thrill to hold a handful. Next page. Reports came in that diamonds as large as 3 inches wide were being found. Officials were seizing these giants until it could be decided what to do with them. Letting these monsters out in the open would cause chaos in the jewelry business. I went to work on the gigantic orbiting ball of diamonds. On the middle of the leading side of this ball, a thin stream of diamonds advanced ahead at 300 miles an hour. Released from the giant red-hot ball, these diamonds rapidly cooled off and sparkled. The thin stream stretched out in front of the ball and assumed its own slightly higher orbit. Nobody noticed this stream for an hour until it and the giant ball orbited around the Earth's sun side and headed back to the shadow side. At that point, the thin diamond stream reflected sunlight to the Earth's dark side. Wildlife used to settling in at dusk were stirred up by the unexpected light. People living in the country far from city lights were the first to notice the light from the thin diamond stream. The news flashed through the electronic media. "Now what's she doing?" "Yeah, now what is she doing?" said President Stinson to her staff. For some reason I keep forgetting Stinson's a woman. In 95 minutes, the ball and stream complex came around the corner of the world again, this time giving off much more light. Everybody saw what I was doing. I was eliminating the darkness of night. It took 5 days to form a complete ring. Even before that, the partial ring was putting out enough light so that people could read a newspaper outdoors at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the partial ring was in the right position. The world would have many changes to get used to. Crime would go down as criminals lost the cover of darkness. I don't know if that's entirely how. It's just daytime 20. Ugh, this does not sound like a good idea. Everybody was joyful at the prospect having 24-hour daylight. Any physicists out there or anybody that knows more about like astronomy or how any of this stuff works, you could probably let me know just how like bullcrap this kind of is. Like now that we're like Tatooine, having two suns kind of going around the place. Like I don't know, things would get like really hot and mess around with orbit. I don't know. Like somebody please let me know about this, because dang son. Never mind. The ring came to completion. There was plenty of diamond left in the red ball, so I continued generating the diamond stream, adding to what was already in place. The diamond ring gave off many times the light of a full moon, not enough to play a baseball game without electric lighting, but more than enough to walk around without stumbling on something. Friends could easily recognize each other from 100 yards away. It was truly a new world. There was still another project related to the resettling of the Israelis. Along the shore of the Antarctic, where nobody was around to watch, I did experiments in raising water up into the air until I developed the exact technique I needed. This was for the big surprise, and that's in capitals, so I guess this is a special project. This project was so secret I didn't even tell Scherzer and Blair. Taking matters into her own hands. I'm pretty sure that there'd be like some comeuppance or some penalty to pay for this, but whatever. Oil exploration on what was being called Theresa's Island continued to be successful. It was believed there were 45 trillion easily accessible barrels of oil there. My credit rating must have been good. 4 months after I raised the oil island tanker, ships were being filled with oil using underwater pipelines leading out to the ships anchored half a mile offshore. The race was on to see which company would get its ship home first, and, not surprising, it looked like ExxonMobil would win. The 210,000-ton Exxon Maria was filled with millions of gallons of crude, I don't know, and set sail for New Jersey. The crew's oil tankers were surprisingly small. It really only took one person to drive them over the next page. One person to drive them over the open sea, with various functions on the ship: cooking, laundry, maintenance, and sleeping shifts. The Exxon Maria had a crew of 27 men. As the Exxon Maria approached New Jersey shore, a 55-foot sports fisherman's powerboat headed straight for the tanker's side at high speed. The boat hit the tanker with a titanic explosion. The flash momentarily hid half the tanker's length. Flaming oil poured out of a 60-foot wide hole in the tanker's side. Burning oil spread out over the water. The heat was so intense, other pleasure boats in the vicinity had to back off half a mile. A black cloud of smoke obscured much of the disastrous scene, but flames could be seen. In only 19 minutes, the giant tanker sank out of sight. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 20. Only 8 chapters left of this stuff, apparently. That was actually a pretty basic chapter. It wasn't too, I don't know, there wasn't anything too terrible about it. I mean, it's still kind of boring, but, I'll take it. I find it funny. It was just talking about, oh, Israelis and whatnot. It seems like Theresa can just do kind of whatever she pleases. The only reason all these governmental people are around is just to kind of make her look more professional, which, sorry, there's dust on my computer. I don't know. It's just kind of the same old same stuff. So she made another son I guess I was thinking about just titling this episode Theresa's Island or just Island, whatever, but I'm thinking about titling it Dang Son. Um, I don't know. But yeah, pretty basic chapter. We're at least in the final stretch of, I said there's 28 chapters, right? At the very end. Yeah, final stretch. This is actually kind of feeling good. I'm glad I could crank this out while I could and had this break off. And oh, oh, okay. 321 to 340. This one might be a little bit on the long side. Chapter 22. Oh, 22 is going to be really short. But yeah, I guess that's the end of that. Time for scripture of the day. Okay, so since it took me a little bit to find something that I thought could be related to this chapter, because it's not only is this one kind of related to this chapter because it's talking a bit about Israel and all that stuff, or even Theresa, of course, trying to act like a god, or should I say goddess in this case, trying to create a new sun and know better than everybody else. And it's also with Halloween kind of coming up, and I think that there's a lot of like you can call me like a tinfoil hat guy or like a nun or something, but there's a lot of dark spirits and conspiracy stuff that goes on Halloween that I've never really been comfortable with, and it's why I've really never been a fan of the holidays. So I'm going to be reading Ezekiel chapter 14, verses 4 through 5. Tell them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The people of Israel have set up idols in their hearts and fallen into sin. And then they go to a prophet asking for a message. So I, the Lord, will give them the kind of answer their great idolatry deserves. I will do this to capture the minds and hearts of all my people who have turned from me to worship their detestable idols. That's from the New Living Translation, by the way. Sorry, it's kind of this is mostly just because I want to get in one take. It's a little bit funky in some translations, I think, or at least it's like I know I'd stumble over my words, and I think that if there's any time to, I've been trying to switch translations for every chapter. I mean, I can only go so far before I get into the wacko kind of translations, but the New Living Translation, I think it's a really good interpretive translation. I'll say maybe not the best default, but it does clear things up, I think, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure I might be missing some footnotes here, but I think that that's a really good read for this chapter in particular when it comes to idol worship, potentially, and just dark spirits. I can only say that for anybody out there on Halloween, just be spiritually aware that your adversary, the devil, does prowl about, and yeah, that'll be the end of this one. Have a good one, and God bless you.